Welcome to Truth and Neurons.
Well, said he heard his friend might have been killed, so he couldn't get a hold of him. Saw the tape and everything, and now he's He said the rumor out there is somebody died here from fentanyl.
Well, I think we certainly were not expecting that to happen.
It is now the leading cause of death for Americans ages 18 to 45.
Across our nation, fentanyl is driving a surge of deaths.
It is the deadliest drug threat our country has ever faced.
A top priority for this administration is dealing with the poisoning of our kids.
I still think of these guys as kids.
Inside the U.S., opioid deaths are rising among teens, many of whom are buying drugs on social media, at times unaware those drugs contain fentanyl.
We view social media right now as the superhighway of drugs.
This is now killing more than 100,000 people a year. That includes fentanyl primarily, but also methamphetamines and other drugs. Kids, young people, college students, executives who take one pill at a party, they're experimenting a little bit, thinking they're doing something reasonably safe, and it kills them. So it's really hitting Americans in a lot of different places.
Customs and Border Protection seized more than 14,000 pounds of fentanyl in the last fiscal year, plus millions of pills that altogether amounted to 410 million doses.
Too many people are dying of overdose in the United States. And a lot of that is driven because of a drug called fentanyl. And so fentanyl isn't just a drug that people do by itself. Very often, fentanyl is blended with other drugs because it reduces the cost of the drug to the person who's selling it. And so fentanyl's hiding or could be hiding in a lot of drugs, including things like stimulants like cocaine or methamphetamine. An overdose, a very small amount of fentanyl, can cause a fatal overdose.
Please get that information out there.
When it comes to mixing drugs, you may think you have a safe approach, but the truth is, your body can react differently every time, even if you've done them before. Whether you're mixing uppers, downers, or both, using multiple drugs can put extra stress on your heart, making it easier to overdose. Or stop your breathing. It can even be fatal.
This was probably one of the most bizarre cases I think that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think that's what we're struggling with. So it's like, we know what we know.
This is real and it's ugly.
Item 71 was documented by investigators as a Ziploc bag with traces of blue powder, an unmeasured amount found on the desk in Zana's bedroom, and it was submitted to the Idaho State Police Forensic Services for controlled substance analysis. So the lab analysed the powder using mass spectrometry with a specific targeted screening, which is designated as drug.m. And the drug.m method is where a sample is dissolved in a solvent like methanol, and it gets vaporized, and those molecules in the vapor are analysed to read unique chemical signatures. Now, the lab report states item 71 was amphetamine. The sample produced a single pristine result matching the exact chemical fingerprint of the amphetamine reference standard. But if we remove the analyst's commentary and assumptions, once again, a report of a clean result tells a whole different story. Firstly, the sample was documented as a blue powder. Pure amphetamine sulfate is a white or off-white crystalline powder. The fact that item 71 was blue means it was either mixed with a cutting agent, illicit dye, or commercial colorant, or it was a different drug altogether. There's nothing in the report indicating any secondary chemical signature that show any cutting agent, dye, or colorant. Also, the mass spectrometry was narrowly configured to only run tests against a reference sample for amphetamine. The disclosed reporting does not include any testing for opioids, so there's no reference runs for fentanyl, heroin, morphine, oxycodone, So unless there's a missing report or there's pages missing from this report, there was some total of 0 testing for one of the most lethal drugs out there. Now, how bad is it? Fentanyl was declared a weapon of mass destruction on December 15, 2025. No testing for a drug that, according to the US Drug Enforcement Administration, is the leading cause of death between adults aged 18 to 45. Let's address the rumors. This is not Adderall. Commercial Adderall does contain amphetamine, but it also contains specific binders and dyes. The pristine amphetamine result for item 71 lacks any of the secondary chemical signatures for blue dye or cutting agents. The report lacks any opioid screening or secondary chemical signatures required to classify the powder as Adderall. The analyst ran a sample. Was it from item 71 is the question. Who knows? Because there is nothing in that report to explain why the blue powder is blue. There's nothing in there really to rule out any opioid. That seems like a massive oversight. We're looking at report 18. Ziploc bag with trace of blue powder, item 71. Now, it is what it is. So when we get to charts like this, many of us are like, yeah, cool. Okay, it says amphetamine. Like, let's look down here, the 4th chart, amphetamine indicated. And yes, according to what I've found, is that M/Z value, 44.1, 91, 65, does actually match the chemical signature of amphetamines. But there are other markers in there. And so I was like, well, I want to know, what are those other markers? So I went up to this part, starting with the top. This miscellaneous info is a methanol amino process. That's what it's saying there. Vial number 51. And we're looking at time over abundance. Didn't mean anything to me 5 minutes ago. And so I asked AI, provide an expected M/Z result for amphetamine, xylazine, fentanyl, oxycodone, cocaine when using this process with methanol, a drug.M with a mass spectrometer. Like I know what I'm talking about. But it is a standard convention for screening controlled substances. A drug M file can be configured for either gas chromatography, which is what they used, and the expected values. And we can see those base peaks, 44, 91, 65, and the others. And then I looked at the report, and apart from those particular markers, there's a abundance over time. I'd love to be more abundant over time. But in this context, I was like, what is it? And we have, when discussing retention time and ion abundance relative intensity. The exact time it takes to pass through the column depends on the specific hardware, blah, 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 blah. Thought, okay, well, specific hardware, but it's got some approximate windows there. Amphetamine, 2 to 3.5 minutes. Cocaine, xylazine, oxycodone, fentanyl, all in the 9.5 upward marker. Okay. It does vary, but in general, that's what it says. And it tells me all sorts of stuff that I don't have the mental spoons to actually process at the moment. So I just cut out that first graph from the report. And what does it tell me? It says the report is experiencing a severe analytical issue that will completely compromise the ability to detect later-eluting target compounds like cocaine, xylazine, oxycodone, or fentanyl. The signature feature of that particular chart that I copy and pasted from the report shows a massive, smooth, exponential rise in baseline abundance starting around 8.5 to 9 minutes, plateauing around 12 minutes at an abundance of over 220,000. Okay, so it's about the temperature. The temperature ramps up significantly during the latter half of the run, often climbing to 280 degrees Celsius to 300 degrees plus Celsius to elute heavier compounds like fentanyl, As the oven gets hotter, a damaged old oxygen-exposed stationary phase rapidly breaks down into volatile cyclic silicates, causing a massive surge in background noise, background ion abundance. Referring back to the typical elution timeline, the baseline rise completely blankets the exact windows where we would see any indicators of cocaine, xylazine, oxycodone, or fentanyl. Any signal from these compounds is entirely drowned out by the background noise, and it gives me troubleshooting steps as if I'm actually doing that. So then, here you go. This is the second chart. Simple. I'm not prompting it. I'm giving it the raw data and saying, tell me what you find. Mass spectrum shown in the file perfectly aligns with the previous diagnostic finding of column bleed while revealing a tiny, heavily obscured trace of an analyte. So it's basically saying the exact marker that shows that there's all this ion breakdown and background noise is the most dominant peak. In fact, if we look at that chart, it's higher than the markers for amphetamine. Amphetamine is still there. Here we go. Trace analyte signal is amphetamine. Despite overwhelming background noise, there is definitively the fingerprint of amphetamine hiding in the scan. Okay, you have amphetamine present, but you can't trust the quantitative abundance or library match scores because the column bleed is drastically distorting the spectrum. Vial number 52, the previous one was vial number 51. It shows significant development compared to the first vial. Unlike the first chromatogram, where the analyte signal was completely invisible on the macro baseline, we have a peak at 4.37 minutes. Sharp vertical rise followed by classic tailing profile, reaching an abundance of approximately 50,000. Perfectly corresponds with mass spectral fragments observed in previous scans, confirms amphetamine is present in the sample at a high enough concentration to stand out above initial low temperature baseline. There is a persistent issue with a late run column bleed. So again, around the 8.5 to 9 minute mark, it begins this exponential climb, plateauing above 220,000. Just like the previous vial, the massive bleed wall means everything else is masked. Does this remind you of anything? Maybe the DNA masking? You can't make this stuff up. I don't know anything about this. I'm just literally getting the data. Forget what the analyst comments or the report findings are and look at the data. Make an analysis for yourself. Go check it out. Find if there's anything to contradict what I've found here. Please let me know. But here's key analytical takeaways. You can reliably detect and integrate early eluting compounds like amphetamine on this system because they escape the column before the oven reaches the high temperature that trigger the structural collapse of the stationary phase. The late eluters are hidden if the sample contains cocaine, xylazine, oxycodone, or fentanyl is still completely masked inside that massive baseline mountain. You will not be able to identify or quantify them. So I need intake maintenance on my mass spectrometer, which I have lying around casually in the house here. So I give it chart 4, again, those markers that we saw, and it's got a definitive confirmation of amphetamine indicated because it's written on the report. You've successfully confirmed amphetamine in this sample sequence. However, keep in mind that this scan was captured during the early low temperature window. It only proves that the column is clean enough to detect light volatile compounds like amphetamine. If you need to screen for heavier target compounds, cocaine, xylazine, oxycodone, or fentanyl, you'll need to verify the massive baseline mountain has been physically resolved. There's a drug epidemic that is driven by fentanyl, the invisible drug. But let's not test for that. It's only one of the most likely causes of drug overdose.
Keep thinking critically and question everything.